That's right.
Here we go.
Good morning, everyone, as you're joining on, I guess it's afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, as you're signing on. I think Linda just said we've got about 9 people in right now, so we've got about 20 registered. So we'll just wait a couple more minutes before we get started. I believe from the virtual on Tuesday, we had plenty of time to get through our program. So we'll give them a couple more minutes, so stay tuned.
While we're waiting for other folks to get in, if you want to introduce yourself in the chat so we know who all's here and what organizations you represent, feel free to do that as well.
One more thing, if you're able to, I always love to see everyone's faces, so I encourage you to turn on your camera so we can see each other, but totally understand if you can't or aren't comfortable.
Or eating lunch.
Or eating lunch. But if you have a baby or an animal in your screen, I would really like to see that, so. Thank you, Trisha.
No babies or animals today.
That's okay. I said it to Ryan sometime last week, but Trisha, I really appreciated the Medicaid Coalition conversation. That a week ago, 2 weeks ago, that was really, really great. So good job.
Yeah, that was really good. It was really productive. I think everyone got a lot out of it. So thank you guys for being there too.
Of course, yeah. Okay, I think as we're introducing ourselves, I think I'm going to get us started here to respect everyone's time. So I put it in the chat, but just want to introduce myself. My name is Jenny Colvin. I am the Vice President of Philanthropy at Riverbend Food Bank. Before we get started, I just want to take a minute to thank our partners and co-hosts who helped make this session possible today. So thank you so much to the project of the Quad Cities, the Quad Cities Community Foundation, and the Harris Center for Nonprofit Excellence. We're truly grateful for your partnership, your leadership, and just the shared commitment to bring our nonprofit community forward to stay informed and ready to respond. For those of you that are newer to OneTable QC, just want to share this effort was created to bring nonprofit leaders, funders, advocates, and community partners together around issues that affect the people and the organizations that serve our Quad Cities. The idea is very simple. When something has the potential to impact our whole sector, we need a shared table where we can learn together, ask questions, and really understand what's at stake, and then together take action. And so that today is a shining example of what we're doing. For those of you that don't know, Tyler is going to go into much more detail here, but the public comment period for the proposed federal grant regulation changes is closing really soon. Those changes I learned at the in-person on Tuesday are going to have significant impacts to our nonprofits that do submit for grant funding. So like I said, Tyler is going to talk more about that, but the good news is that public comments really matter. Agencies review both the substance and volume of the comments that they receive, and that public feedback can and does help shape that final policy. I think we're going to share that there is movement happening just from between Tuesday and today. There's been, I think, 82,000 comments that have been submitted, which is very significant and wonderful. So I'll stop yammering. I'm going to turn it over to Tyler Mitchell, the Director of Development at the Project the Quad Cities, to lead us through the discussion today. Tyler will help provide an overview of the changes, explain the comment process, and then share some helpful resources, answer questions, and give us time to draft and submit comments. Tyler says he is caffeinated and ready to go. So Tyler, welcome, and I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jenny, for that introduction. Good morning, everybody. Or I guess good afternoon. It's 12:06 now. My name is Tyler Mitchell. I am the Development Director at the Project of the Quad Cities. And first and foremost, I want to thank, again, OneTable QC and the Quad City Community Foundation for really coming together in partnership with us to share this information and to give people the context that they need to take action against a proposed rule that, as Jenny stated, could have a significant impact on our nonprofit community across the Quad Cities. So we're just going to get right into it. Again, if you have any questions, I would definitely encourage you to put them in the chat. Linda will be keeping an eye on those, and we'll certainly have some time at the end to answer any questions and provide more clarity if necessary. But really, to get into our agenda this morning, right, or this afternoon, so sorry, we're going to cover a little bit of background. We're going to talk about the Office of Management and Budget, look at the proposed rules, and understand as well the potential impact and why this is so concerning for nonprofits, not just in the Quad Cities, but across the nation. And then we'll take a moment to look at the comment writing process. So understanding what that entails, how to complete it. I'll also provide you with a link to a template that you are welcome to use to kind of get your initial comment started. And then finally, we'll wrap up with some next steps and take some time to begin drafting those comments, whether that's together as a group or on your own individually. That's up to you. But really, the goal today is to provide you with all the information you need to feel like you can complete this process successfully. So some quick background, right? And I'll give the disclaimer. It is quite possible that many of you know what the Office of Management and Budget is, and that you are even potentially an expert in this area in ways that I am not, and that is okay. By and large, we think of the Office of Management and Budget as the rule setter for the federal government in terms of how it spends money. So it doesn't distribute grant funding itself, right? Typically, that comes from the agency that is actually working on the grant and distributing funds. But it does create the policies and regulations that federal agencies use when actually administering the grants. And one of the most important parts of those rules is something called uniform guidance. And by and large, that establishes the common requirements for most federal grants, right? Whether it's in, health and human services or housing and urban development, right? We have a set of common rules called uniform guidance that all grants are really tied to. And so, again, uniform guidance, that common rule book, right? It creates a set of rules across multiple federal agencies. It governs how billions of dollars in federal funding are awarded and managed. It also provides consistency and predictability for grantees. And changes to the uniform guidance can affect organizations across the nonprofit sector. And not just those funded by one particular agency, right? And even those organizations or agencies that are not federally funded have great cause for concern regarding these proposed rules, and we'll talk about why here very soon. So the proposed rule we're discussing today would amend portions of uniform guidance, which is why these changes could affect nonprofit organizations across the sector, and again, why it is of such great concern to the nonprofits here in the Quad Cities. So next year, we're going to talk a little bit about what exactly is in the proposed rules. So on May 29th, the Office of Management and Budget proposed significant revisions to uniform guidance. That included increasing financial uncertainty for organizations receiving federal funding. That would be sort of part of that initial impact to nonprofit organizations. It would also make it more difficult for nonprofits and public agencies to plan, deliver, and sustain services. The rules as written would give federal agencies broad discretion to suspend, terminate, or modify awards and grant conditions. And I think one important part to stress is that this can happen even after a grant has already been awarded, right? This really goes back to why it places nonprofit organizations in sort of the wild, wild west, if you will, of wandering around and trying to find resources and being unsure of what you are actually able to rely on. And then, moreover, it would allow funding decisions to be influenced by broad policy or ideological considerations rather than objective program requirements, while reducing transparency in the decision-making process. For example, I was doing some more reading into this today because I feel like with how vast the proposed rules are, there's always more to pick up on as you're reading through it. But there would be a pre-selection process for certain organizations that have been funded in the past, and if for some reason that organization no longer receives federal funding, the rules as written would not require an explicit reason to be stated. And again, a sort of a rescission of funding could be made at any given moment if the administration determines that the grant funding no longer matches the overall priorities of the administration. And to be clear, this is truly it is a nonpartisan issue in that regardless of what administration is in power, right? Whether it is a Republican or a Democrat, the rules are the same and would equip the executive branch with broad discretion to make changes to grants based off of political ideology. So again, as I mentioned before, you may be thinking to yourself, well, my organization doesn't receive federal dollars directly or even indirectly for that matter, so why does it matter to me, right? Well, again, you may not receive federal dollars, but our communities that you serve most certainly do, right? So many essential services across our community rely on federal funding. If those resources shrink, it is not as if the need suddenly evaporates as well, right? People will still need access to supportive services in order to live their lives. Organizations losing federal funding will increasingly compete for foundation grants, corporate giving, and individual donations. And then even organizations without federal grants may experience greater demand for services, increased competition for funding, and changes to local partnerships, right? So in so many ways, the impact of this will trickle down far beyond just those organizations that are directly receiving federal funding to those who do not, and the onus and responsibility will end up falling on them in many ways. So we have these proposed rules, right? We're going to talk a little bit about the process of a proposed rule, what that looks like so that you can better understand how comment writing fits into the larger picture. So first, right, a proposed rule is published, right? So agencies, across the board and the executive branch will often, make policy or regulatory updates within already established laws, right? That is in many ways well within their right to do so. And when they choose to make an amendment to rules, they are published, and doing so immediately opens up that rule to an opportunity to comment from the public, right? So anyone can submit feedback during the public comment period. And when that rule is first proposed, that starts a comment period of 60 days, right? So that is why, as I've had on a couple slides here, comments are due for this proposed rule by July 13th based off of that initial date when the rule was posted. The agency then reviews the comments, right? Public input in many ways can influence whether the rule is revised before it becomes final. It is also quite possible that the rule will not be revised in any way based off of public comment, right? I just want to be very clear about that. However, that does not negate the value of public comments. A final rule is then issued, and then once that rule is published, it generally becomes legally binding. However, the process matters in that if an agency doesn't follow required procedures, the rule can be challenged in court, and then public comments often become part of the legal and administrative record and are directly referenced in litigation in order to help, the judicial branch sort of make a decision as to whether or not the proposed rules violate any sort of laws in any way, right? So again, even if the agency does not modify the rule as a result of comments, depending upon what happens after that, comments are still integral to helping to hopefully, turn back on this proposed rule and undo unnecessary damage to our area nonprofits. So, comment writing, right? So as you are beginning to think about what you're wanting to put into your comment, here are a few tips to keep in mind. So first and foremost, speak from your own experience and expertise, right? You don't need to cover every issue or respond to every part of the proposed rule. Again, if you take the time to actually go through the proposed rule, frankly, it is a behemoth of a document, and I'm still finding new things as I continue to read through it, right? So you can speak to the part of the rule that will be most impactful to you as an individual or to the mission of your organization, right? So it's actually good to hone in on something specific and really, sort of deconstruct it from there. It's also important that you are very clear about what you support and what you don't support. This is also a great opportunity to include relevant data or stories or testimonials from your own experiences to make clear your opposition to the proposed rule. We also suggest that you, again, be as detailed or as succinct as you like to be, right? You don't need to write a lengthy comment for it to have an impact. Sort of as Jenny was saying, right, both the number of comments and their content matter to the overall process. So don't let concerns about length stop you from making sure that your voice and expertise are heard. I've been looking at some of the different comments that have been posted, and truly there is such a wide variety of longer ones and shorter ones. However you think is necessary to get your point across and to get your message communicated, that's really all that matters. What to include, right? So here is an example of how you could at least begin an initial comment, and I actually took the 3 different parts here: the introduce yourself, the explain how, and identify a specific concern, directly from the template that I will be providing to you from the National Nonprofit Alliance. So the first part, my name is Tyler Mitchell. I am the development director of the Project of the Quad Cities, a nonprofit serving people living with HIV in eastern Iowa and western Illinois. Much of our work is supported through the federal Ryan White HIV/AIDS program, right? So really included the portion about Ryan White in the federal program to make it clear to the agency, to the Office of Management and Budget, why this rule is relevant to us and would have a specific impact. The proposed changes would create significant uncertainty for our organization and make it more difficult to sustainably provide essential services to more than 700 people living with HIV across Iowa and Illinois. And then finally, identify a specific concern and what should change. This proposal would require us to operate in a shifting environment, making it difficult to provide vital services to the people who need us most, right? So again, going back to the part of where the proposed rule would allow essentially for a rescission in funding at any given moment based off of the discretion of the agency who is responsible for the funding. And that puts nonprofits in a really bad position when it comes to providing services and also planning for the future. So how to submit? There really is kind of really just one way to do it. So you're going to want to go to regulations.gov. This is the website that is used by the government for notice and comment. From the homepage, you'll use the search bar to find the rule that you would like to comment on. And then once you find the rule, you'll actually see directly in the search results a big comment button. I want to say it's like a blue or a green color, and you can click on that button and it will directly take you to the comment interface. And really within the comment interface, this is where you can type a comment directly into a text box. You can also upload an attachment. So if you would prefer to, put something in a Word doc or a PDF, you are certainly welcome to do so. But you'll write your comment, whether it's in the box or submitted. And this also is when you have the chance to mark if you would like to submit anonymously. That is completely up to you. If you feel as if that makes you more comfortable or makes your organization feel safer in submitting a comment, then by all means, check the anonymous option. You are not required to create an account on this website in any way. And if you check the anonymous option, you don't even have to provide your email address. So from what I can tell and from what everyone else that I've spoken to has agreed, it does appear to, in fact, be anonymous. But then after you're done putting all your stuff in and, getting your comment really uploaded there, you can submit it. And if you do choose to provide your email address, you should receive an email that confirms that you did in fact comment. So FAQ, just a few quick questions that we often receive when going through these comment writing workshops. First, is there a risk to myself or the organization I represent in posting a comment? I would say you should absolutely consider your unique circumstances prior to posting. Please note, as I said before, there is the post anonymously feature on the website. The one thing that I would say is if you are posting anonymously, please be mindful of the identifying details that you post in your comment, right? Just to be really direct, if I click post anonymously and then in the comment I say, hi, my name is Tyler Mitchell from the Project of the Quad Cities, right? Kind of defeats the purpose of posting an anonymous comment. So just be mindful of what details you are putting there. Is posting more than one comment allowed? If so, is it encouraged? You are certainly, welcome. Especially if you're using an anonymous feature. What I would say is that we really would rather have strong, thorough comments that are really specific in what they are addressing, as opposed to, dozens of vague ones that really are not useful to the actual process that we're trying to complete here, right? Again, quantity and content both matter. And when all is said and done, especially if this moves to litigation, the subject matter is going to be really important as the process moves forward. And then what steps should I take after posting a comment, right? I would say, share your comment and other resources with individuals and organizations who would also be impacted by these proposed rules. Again, we have until Monday to really get these comments submitted. So there is still time for you to, bring awareness to the people, in your circle and to get them to take action. Helpful resources, and I will also provide these as links directly in the chat. But the first one that I want to connect you with is the National Council of Nonprofits. They actually created a very comprehensive comment writing guide that is specific to this issue. And this is actually where you will find that template that I mentioned, along with other tips and suggestions for how to create an effective comment. And then, of course, a direct link to the comment itself, right? If you're like, oh, I don't want to search through the website and try and find this, I feel you, trust me. And the website has a lot on it. So I will also post this link in the chat here momentarily, but you're also welcome to scan the QR code on the slide if you are more that type, and it will take you directly to the proposed rule and where you can comment. So, next steps. A few other things worth mentioning before we answer questions. First, the National Council of Nonprofits, as I mentioned, they're the ones who put together that very comprehensive comment writing guide. They are also sending a letter to the Office of Management and Budget and are inviting organizations and I believe individuals as well to sign on. So please consider, doing so and taking action in that way. We also encourage you to contact your elected officials, right? Technically, this is something that if Congress decided they wanted to pass legislation dictating this in any direction, they could do so. But this issue is still not necessarily on everybody's radar. But we are, as Jenny mentioned, getting some good momentum. We know that Senator Susan Collins, as well as Senator Chuck Schumer, have both made comment on, or at least public comments on these proposed rules, stating that they are in opposition. So, that is already bipartisan in nature. So hopefully we'll continue to see that momentum. Tell others about the proposed rules and how to submit comments. Again, I will provide you with additional resources that will make that job a little bit easier. And then finally, vote this November, right? Showing up at the ballot boxes in November is really one of the most important ways that we can affect change on our system. And to vote in elected officials who are going to be supportive of nonprofit work across the Quad Cities community. Thing I wanted to mention is we have another great OneTable QC event coming up. This is happening on Tuesday, August 4th from 10 a.m. to noon. It's called From Burnout to Fortitude, Sustaining Nonprofit Leaders, happening at the Junior Achievement Inspiration Center Conference Room. And I think all of us in nonprofit work will experience burnout in our own ways. And this is a great opportunity for you to kind of learn from some experts about how you can better care for yourself, reduce those feelings of burnout, and really show up in a meaningful way for your organization every single day. Okay, so concludes my slides. Again, happy to start answering any questions. I am gonna go ahead and start grabbing those. Oh, cool. You know what? Linda already posted the link with the handouts, so I don't even need to do anything. She did the hard work for me, so thank you very much, Linda. I will add one additional link. I use this platform, it's called Scribe, to take essentially screenshots of how the comment writing process works. So if you're more of a visual person and would like to, go through the steps that way, it's a great resource for you to consider. I am happy to answer any questions. I'll also I'll say to others, again, you may all have a lot of information in this area, and if I don't know the answer, I invite someone to chime in who may know the answer so that we can all kind of work together here.
I would add too, if you've not looked at what these regulations are, it's great nighttime reading because it'll put you to sleep, or it'll give you nightmares, one or the other. But do take a look. The National Council on Nonprofits has done a great job of summarizing it. And I will say I submitted my comments earlier this week and sent a letter to all of our congressional representatives. I used AI and I said, okay, here's my issue. Please, here's what it says. Will you summarize it for me? And will you help me write my comment? That was a very quick, effective, painless way to do so. So you don't have to necessarily digest every word in there, but pick out in there what is most troublesome to you Another good resource I'll point you to is the Grant Professionals Association. They have done a lot of work on this because obviously this impacts grant professionals. If you go on their website, and I'll find the direct link and I will send that to you as well. I'll put that in the chat. That's another good resource. They have summarized what their issues with this legislation is as well.
Thank you, Linda. And again, whether you're writing your comment yourself or, using AI, for example, to assist, the part that I would stress is just really make sure that that personalization portion is very present, right? You need to speak, whether it's from your own background or, again, from the context that specifically applies to your organization, because that is what makes these comments unique. And that is really what will be taken into consideration as these rules move forward. Does anybody else have any questions? I used to teach college speech, and when there were no questions, I would just tell them that my presentation must have been perfect and that I did an amazing job. So that's what I'm going to tell myself to boost my ego for the rest of the day.
We also, just not a question because you did an awesome job, but we also on the OneTable website, that there's a link in that in the chat as well, is is a list of our local legislators. So if you aren't sure who they are or you don't have their contact information, that's all in there as well. So you can access that information too.
Looks like we got a question in the chat. Can you share the legislative rule number in the chat?
Yes, I was just copying and pasting that.
Thank you, Tyler.
And we'll send that. Yes, the link that I'm providing right now will just take folks directly to the part of regulations.gov where they can read the proposed rule as well as make their comment.
But I would reiterate what Tyler said earlier. Read the summary that the National Council on
Yes.
Nonprofits provided.
Yes, it's very well done. And unless, as Linda pointed out, you want something to fall asleep to at night and maybe have a few nightmares, the summary is great and gives you what you need. Were there any questions at all?
Tyler,
Do you
know how quickly you get an acknowledgement when you submit a comment? Is it instantaneous or when they read it? You know that?
I want to say it is, if you provide your email address, you at least get that instantaneous confirmation that you submitted the comment. I am not 100% certain if there's really any sort of follow-up, for example, after, the agency has reviewed your comment or anything like that. I imagine that our follow-up will be seeing what has happened, publicly through news media as the process moves forward. And actually, I'm also going to provide Linda the link to the Hill piece that we were talking about earlier that mentions Susan Collins and again has some more information about this rule.
I apologize if we talked about this in this session. I'm mixing it up with Tuesday, but something we talked about Tuesday was the importance of, throughout this past year with OneTable events, the relationships that you've hopefully been forming with local policymakers, the ones that have been attending our sessions. This is a great opportunity to talk to them about what you're going to write about and informing them on how this is going to affect your organizations. So I encourage you to use this as a touch point with policymakers.
Tyler, Tricia just asked, do we have any sense of the likelihood of this passing?
Yeah, so Tricia, I want to give the caveat. I am providing my personal analysis on your question here. So if I had to guess the course of events here, I do not believe that the administration will likely make any modifications to the proposed rules as a result of comments submitted. I am confident in stating that the proposed rules go far beyond the actual scope that the administration can make in modifying rules, right? The best comparison I can make, it's slightly different, kind of comparing apples and oranges, but we recently saw, the president issued an executive order on a program called public service loan forgiveness, and a federal court recently shot down that executive order, mostly because it was the administration sort of overstepping their actual purview. And I feel as if that is happening again here. I do believe that this will move into the court system. I'm sure somebody is preparing a lawsuit as we speak, and that hopefully this is when our comments will really come into play, and that the court system will turn this down, and hopefully we will be back to sort of the place that we are at now, where the rules are at least more objective and less detrimental to nonprofit organizations than if these were to go into effect.
What I'm hearing, Tyler, would support what you're saying as well. I would bet money that some of the national organizations, like the National Council on Nonprofits, like AFP, like GPA, and I don't know any of these for sure, are likely preparing lawsuits. I mean, there are so many things as you read it that I cannot imagine are legal, but that means more important you get your comments in, because
Yep.
those can be used as part of that legislation. Be specific. And as Tyler mentioned, the Hill article that I'm supposed to give credit to my son because he found it and sent it to me this morning, is, Susan Collins, I believe, has introduced legislation, and I'm losing the other name, has written, Chuck Schumer has written
Yes.
a letter to the head of OMB expressing his opposition. If we can get that kind of groundswell in Congress, passing laws is another way to make this happen.
So again, what I would say is kind of how the last two sessions have worked is we've provided this information and folks have sort of gone off on their own to write and draft their comments. You are totally welcome to do that. Again, I would definitely reference that the National Nonprofit Council, whatever, I'm forgetting names now. It's okay. I would definitely reference that comment guide because it is filled with resources. It has that template there. Along with the other resources that we have provided to you. I think all of you will be very well prepared to submit your comment. Any other questions? Otherwise, unless Linda and Jenny tell me otherwise, I think we can probably, wrap this up with a nice bow. Okay, going once, going twice, now that I hear none. Thank you all so much for coming and for your time. It's deeply appreciated. I'm also happy that I could give you back some time today. So please, again, share this information, tell your colleagues and other nonprofit professionals. This is very serious and we need everybody on board in order to push back against this. So thank you again.
I just want to reiterate, comments are due on Monday, right?
Yes.
So take the time, write your comment, share it with people, get your comment in. Sorry, Jenny, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, totally. Just wanted to say thank you, Tyler, for driving this. This was really, really important, and we are happy to support this. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye, friends.